This next video comes out of a need created by this last one here. The Wise and Foolish Builders. It's a story that we learn as a kid quite a bit, and I kind of feel it doesn't have a real practical application in most church settings. I mean, it's taught, it's expounded upon. It usually has to do with, or the feeling of it is, it has to do with the laws and the morals and teachings of Jesus Christ, or even sometimes it's limited to the teachings of chapter 7, but there's a broader implication here, and I think it works pretty well. I'm going to read it real quick. Therefore, everyone who hears the words of mine and puts them into practice is like the wise man who built his house on the rock. The rains came down, and the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall because it had a foundation on a rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. The rains came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Again, most of the time people read and hear this, they think the rules, the morality, the overall teachings. These are the things that we hear. But I think there's a broader implication to it. It's all of it. It's the greater picture that Christ paints of not only himself, but God, who God is, his personality, his wants, his needs, his desires for us. All of that is what Jesus is talking about here. It's everything that he teaches in general, and most of which has to do with how the Father works, how the kingdom works, all of it. So those are the teachings I believe he's talking about, and basically it kind of boils down to an accurate representation of who the God of the Bible is, an accurate representation of who he is. Those are the things that Christ is talking about being the foundations of our house being our faith, our belief, it being it's our works, it's everything religious pertaining to us. Two people sitting in the same church can build identical houses, meaning they can do the same things. They can go to the same church. They're there every time the doors are open. They volunteer their time. They give the same type of money, the same percentage they give, and do everything exactly the same. But one of them will sit there in the church and then maybe have an idea of who God is, being maybe a Gandalf wizard type grandfather who trades goodwill and good works for wishes or prayers granted. See, that would be a house built on sand, because that's not who God is according to Christ in the Bible here. And then the very next guy sitting in the pew right next to him could have an accurate picture of who God is according to Jesus. Who understands it? In this case, God offers agape and not necessarily storge as far as love goes, meaning, God allows for pain in the offer that he makes for us. And that accurate picture of God is going to see this man through the winds and the rain, the hardships, the trials, the headache, the hurt, all the things that, that's still enslaved for us, even though that we're a Christian, we're not immune to. When a house falls, when a faith falls is when the winds and rains come, when your kid is sick, when you lose your job, and you cry out to this Gandalf God of yours, and you do all these good works and you get nothing in return. Then your faith falls. It crumbles. It comes down with a hard crash because the person you're calling out to doesn't exist. It's so far off the mark, God is not willing to support your particular picture of him. The reason being is, if he did, if he helped you out in that moment of need, it would cement your idea of Gandalf being God, that this great wizard trades good deeds for miracles. That's not what God wants. I mean, it's clear right here. He wants you to have an accurate picture of him. So when bad things do happen and you call out, he can come in and show you and support you. That's the support. That is the foundation. It's God Himself that's being there for you, because you have put into practice all the things that Christ here has taught. I mean, you have accepted who God really is, and not some religious or some traditional version of Him that can't possibly exist. That actually contradicts what Christ Himself teaches. That's what the parable of the wise and the foolish builders are. The people who build their faith on an accurate picture of God, an accurate representation of God and Christ, and those who don't.